Good morning, everyone. We're going to bring this meeting to order. My name is Keely Bosler. I am filling in for Brian Johnson, who had to stay in San Francisco today in recovery, and very happy to do so. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We're going to start with Chris giving a few announcements. I'm then going to, and including an introduction to our newest board member. And then I'll run through the agenda and give you the flow for the day so you can plan. Let's first establish a quorum, though.
Member Andrews?
Present.
Member Bosler?
Here.
Member Countryman?
Present.
Member DeBoo?
Here.
Member Griego is absent. Secretary Johnson?
I'm here remotely, and thank you, Keely.
All right, the quorum is established. I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Officer, Chris Leaf.
Thank you, Member Bosler. So first, I'd like to offer congratulations to Jeremiah Peak, engineer on our staff, for earning his license as a professional engineer. He's been with the board's deferred encroachment compliance section for nearly 2 years, and we're very happy to celebrate the significant professional milestone. Congratulations, Jeremiah. Next, I'd like to welcome and introduce our newest board member, Jim DeBoo. Jim has a rich background in government and politics, including as Executive Secretary for Governor Newsom, Interim Chief of Staff and Director of the Speaker's Office of Member Services for Speaker John Perez, and Chief Legislative Director for Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. He founded DeBoo Strategic Affairs in 2023, and we're thrilled to have him join us here at the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Welcome, Jim.
And I just want to say a few words because I've worked with Jim for a good portion of my career and very closely when I was the Director of Finance. And I just very thrilled that he's here. He's somebody that can navigate both policy and politics. And he is a Sacramento native. So he's from the Valley. He and I both share that we went to Chico State, which is a fun fact. And I know he's very, very excited to serve this community and the Central Valley. So we're excited to have him here.
Thanks, Keely. I am excited to be here. I think for folks who've seen my background, it is in state government. I was served about 17 years, a couple of those years in the governor's office with Keely, but most of my time was spent in the legislature as a chief of staff and helping negotiate budgets and water bonds and legislation, and I've done quite a bit on the political side. But I think the most important thing to me is I'm about 51 years old, and I've spent almost 40 plus years of my life in Sacramento. I grew up here, went to school here, rode motorcycles on the levees, fished, hunted on the levees. I know, drank a couple beers on the levees, but have really spent the majority of my life here and using the waterways for both recreation, like I said, fished, hunted, duck blinds, pheasant hunting, all the things I probably shouldn't have been doing. But I'm thrilled to be here. My hope is, with my background, that I can help marry the federal and state and even local government perspective. I've worked in both local and state government and had quite a bit of interaction, both good and bad, with the federal government. And as we're facing kind of these historic budget cuts that are coming through on the federal side, and understanding that even in the state of California, we're all kind of feeding from the same trough financially in the budget, and Keely has talked about that, I'm sure, before. But understanding we have massive funding issues coming up, and hopefully, my hope is that I can help navigate some of those issues and really create a narrative as to why keeping this a sustainable and functioning and viable delta and levee system is imperative to the infrastructure of the state of California and the people who rely on us to protect them. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to just do a quick run through on the agenda, and I have some unfortunate news, which is We had a website that was down for a period of time during the notification period, and so in abundance of caution and to really respect the Bagley-Keene rules the way they are, all the action items are going to be put off until the next meeting. We are going to hear the enforcement order item, board, that's 9A, but everything that requires an action will be moved to the next board meeting, unfortunately. Yes, we're going to keep it all consistent. We're not going to pull anything
How
off.
did we operate before we had the internet?
Well, people had to come see it on the, there's a new standard now, new standard. But yes, we are apologize for that. It was outside of our control, and we just have making that call today. We've got, so we will review here. We've got public comment. We will be able to take that. So for those of you that came to speak, for example, on 9B, which is the cross levee fence, if you really, you're welcome to speak in public comment. We're not going to hear that item today, but if you have made the trip here, we would love to hear from you. So please feel free to bring your comments on that day. We will rehear that item at our next meeting. We will go through the legislative update. We have a report from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on levee inspection. We will again hear the enforcement order, which is 9A. We will not take an action, but that will be on consent at the next next board meeting. And then 9B will be put over. 9C, we will hear the presentation from our staff. We have all of the other reports. This is going to be a fairly short agenda, is my sense. Any questions from board members, comments? I took your comment, Joe. What did we do without the internet? I feel like it was posted on a door somewhere physically. Exactly. Yeah. Different standards now with the internet. Okay. With that, we are going to move right to number 6, right? So. And I have got some comment cards. I will run through these first, and then we will see if there are anyone else. So I've got Pete Rabone. Yeah, and just a reminder for everyone, it is 3 minutes, and there is a timer that you can see. But thank you.
Am I on now? Okay, thank you. My name is Pete Rabone, and I am here, I get 3 minutes, not 2. And I am here representing myself, and for full disclosure, I have worked with the board previously, probably 20 plus years ago. But I'm here to talk to you about the strategic plan. And first of all, it's wonderful to see an organization like this have a strategic plan that gives you a document to help guide you on a very broad approach. And let me go through a couple items. I'm going to read it. Your mission statement: reduce the risk of catastrophic flooding. You're going to do that through promoting projects that enhance ecosystem functions, floodplain expansion, and projects that support multiple benefits. Projects that support multiple benefits. You've got 3 goals. I can demonstrate how it would address what I'm going to be hitting on, but I'm going to focus more on goal 3. Provide leadership to promote and participate in collaborative partnerships that advocate efforts to reduce flood risk in the Central Valley. Now, I am up here because I live behind a levee. And so anything you can do to reduce flood risk, to me, is very important. And within that goal, it talks of support for flood risk reduction initiatives. I now want to use an example of how strategic planning can help advance the goal of the board. And I'm going to pick one that is somewhat sensitive. I live in the Greenhaven Pocket area. You've probably had the city of Sacramento come up here and talk to you about the multi-use trail on the top of the levee. That, to me, is not a multi-use trail. That, to me, is a flood management improvement. To be able to fight a flood from a paved levee crown is better than having to fight a flood from a graveled levee crown. To build a sandbag wall during flooding is going to be much easier if you're working off a paved crown. If, heaven forbid, since I live there, if you get minor levee overtopping, you need to make sure that there is some kind of erosion protection on top of that levee. The city will provide that with a paved levee crown. And now the nice thing about all this is you didn't pay a penny for it. The city has to do that. So using that as an example, I ask that the board and the staff look at using that strategic plan to help promote your mission. And it frequently goes outside the bounds of just flood risk management. Be happy to entertain any question that you may have.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rick Reinhardt, you're up next. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Good morning. Rick Reinhardt, Wood Rogers. I just want to take an opportunity to express my appreciation and praise for your enforcement staff. Over my career, I've worked with the board on implementing flood damage reduction projects on behalf of reclamation districts and flood control agencies, cities and counties, and usually been on the other side of the fence on enforcement actions, actually requesting the board take actions so that we could meet requirements for implementing projects or for FEMA certification. This past year, I took on 3 clients. They're all private property owners. Kind of a much better appreciation now for how onerous the process is for a property owner, how expensive it is to hire attorneys, consultants, the permit process. In this case, we were working on some pretty complex issues for each property, and what I really appreciate about your staff is how they approached each one with an open mind. They were very pragmatic at looking at solutions that both met the requirements that the board has for maintaining the Sacramento River Flood Control Project, but also doing it in a way that allowed the property owner some use of their property in ways that did not harm it. And so just here today to say thank you to Michael, Angelis, Augustine for the work they've done with me this past year. On behalf of the property owners I represent, I know they're very appreciative for their efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Nancy Niskern, sorry.
Perfectly fine. Okay, thank you. Today I'm talking as a member of the public who's trying to get information on the budgets of upcoming protection projects here in the valley, specifically along the American River. I tried to obtain budget information. I watched one of the budget hearings in May with Assistant Secretary of the Army, Adam Tell, and our ranking member, who is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. Alex Padilla was also present. Both senators gave the secretary a hard time as to their office, the secretary's office, not returning phone calls and working with local people more closely, meaning their offices, Padilla's and Whitehouse. And the assistant secretary, I think, did very well in his hearing, but he announced again and again that they're going now for a more streamlined situation with infrastructure, not paperwork. The Corps published a deauthorization list that would deauthorize $23.9 billion worth of projects. I don't know how that affects us, and that I don't know where it went. I'm trying to find out information. I called Senator Padilla's office, and they recommended me to call the Public Affairs Office at the Corps to get the real budget information. I called on June 25, July 1, July 14, July 17, and left messages, and I never received a return call, and the phone was never picked up. I understand that during the projects, there's some adjustments to money and project itself. We learned about the coating needed on the rods, which was estimated to cost an additional $1 million and a year's worth of work. We love the idea of the new spillway. I hope that gets done and finished and useful. There was the expanded addition of the Sacramento weir. The end of this addition apparently was seeping into the ground, and the project manager admitted that the soil research was not adequately done. But they do have a certain amount of cush to correct these types of mistakes that happen to all of us who try to get something done. We recently learned that the Corps ran out of money and the Folsom Dam raise could not be completed. This is especially worrisome. I did follow up with that information with the Corps, again, the same telephone contact, and I also contacted the Department of Water Resources without having a call returned or getting any information. I trust that the Central Valley Flood Protection Board will be able to find out the reasons and inform the public of a more promising result of the dam raise. We also think that's a great project. We'd love to see it to fruition. I look forward to the board's investigation and resulting information, and I thank you. I'm afraid that they're moving money from red states to blue states, from blue states to red states from the federal dynamic, and we all have to be careful and aware of how we spend our money. Thank you.
Yes, Joe.
I know it's not our custom to reply to these public comments, but you can consider me public comment on this. I'm just appalled. We have spent hundreds of millions of dollars raising Folsom Dam, improving levees, widening the Sacramento bypass, all predicated on the gates at Folsom being replaced. At a luncheon with the colonel of the district office, he mentioned to me kind of offhand that they weren't going to fund the completion of the gates at Folsom because of funding. I mean, my God, hundreds of millions of dollars are being just totally wasted if those gates are not replaced. I mean, I hope DWR is doing everything possible to get that funded, because it's just nonsensical to go and raise Folsom Dam 3 feet and then not replace the gates so you can't even use the surcharge. It's ridiculous. So I confirm your comment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and take that as something that I think this board should get a status on. I think we heard when we were up in Marysville a few months ago too about a situation where there was like one little piece left that they decided to pull out and the feds weren't going to fund. I think we need to really, I mean, these things have been evolving, but we should get an update here at the board about what the status is. So I appreciate that, Joe. I appreciate your comment, Board Member Countryman. Thank you. Any other, I know we had one online.
Richard Markison. See me speak.
Good morning, board members. Richard Markison. I live in the Pocket area. I appreciate the board's deferral to your next meeting for action items. And I just wanted to comment that your clerk, your board staff, is always very prompt in replying to my request for information. And so I truly appreciate the diligence that your staff is taking to make sure that the communication is open and materials for board meetings are easily available to members of the public. So thank you very much for that and for your decision today. Thanks.
All right. Is there any other public comment? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kristen Haney, and I'm a property owner near the levee. I put in for 9B only because it was a way to have a conversation. As a property owner and a bicycle rider, over 30 years, the city has attempted to make the bike path go all the way through. That has never happened because of the gates, which have become more and more onerous in the little pocket and in the pocket area. I have investigated the maps to see how the properties are apportioned. I don't understand those decisions from the 1950s and 1960s, but it seems to me that many years ago we could have gone through eminent domain because that's what should have happened. I grew up in Southern California where property owners were cutting off access to beaches, and then the Coastal Conservancy was established. And I think it's time for that today if these kind of issues continue. Big wrought iron fences, even in the public access areas. So I don't know if you're unaware of these additional gates or are just lacking the ability to do anything about it, but I'm not letting it go. I have contacted different staff at Water Resources and also the Flood Board, and I've gotten nowhere. But I will not give up, and I think you have a responsibility to those homeowners. The flood project protects our homes. I get it. You can have keys for the Water Resources staff, but I also used to represent scientists and engineers, and I know how things are in the flood. I remember when the helicopters were flying up and down the levee looking for breaks, and you may or may not have those. The right person might not have the right keys, and that's what concerns me. We're seeing what's happening back east. It could easily happen here, and I think we need to wake up and plan for that. And continuing to provide homeowners with a bigger enforced gate that goes farther down into the levee, down into the river, and that, especially with they claim that it's for issues that they've had with encroachment. There's not even a police report, so they make absolutely no effort. Now, if a property like the one in 9B has had some permits since the 1950s, as I recall, well, obviously there was an access all this time, so they don't have a property report, so that they can't make a police report. So it seems to me that the criteria for which you allow establishment of these stronger and stronger gates so nobody can pass and that we have limited access to the river has got to stop. Just starting with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment for 9B that I don't have a card for? That we're hearing here at 6. All right. Guess we will move on to legislative update. Is that you, Chris?
Chris Leaf, Executive Officer. I don't have anything to add. There's a fairly substantial write-up of the House version of WRDA 2026. Over the last week, the Senate came out with their version, and in the next ledge report, I intend to outline the Senate's version.
And I'll just note that at the coordinating committee earlier this week, we did have a presentation on the FEMA report about how the federal government's considering making changes to FEMA and the way in which they assist states and local governments in emergencies. And that was a very robust conversation, and we got a lot more. I don't know that we got a lot more clarity because there's a lot of uncertainty, and certainly some of the things will require statutory changes that are, would be very, very significant for all states, not just California. Any comments or questions about the legislative update? All right, then we will move on to item 8, and we will invite Jeremiah Peak from our board staff and Daniel Sparks to present.
right. Good morning, Board Member Bosler and members of the board. My name is Jeremiah Peak with the Deferred Encroachment Compliance section, and I'm here with Daniel Sparks from the Corps. And we're here today to present on the Ryer Island levee system. We're also joined by Chris Newdeck with the district. Next slide, please. So here we have a vicinity map of the Ryer Island levee system. The Ryer Island levee system protects, as you might imagine, Ryer Island from flooding from Miner Slough, Cache Slough, Sutter Slough, and Steamboat Slough, which is all in Solano County. So that's my intro for the system, so I'll pass the mic over to Daniel, and he'll pick it up from here.
Good morning, members of the board. So next slide, please. So again, we're presenting here on Ryer Island. So it's a system about 20 miles southwest of, here in Sacramento in Solano County, and it provides protection to a lot of agricultural land on the island itself. Next system, please. So this is the report card. The system itself is currently active in the PL 8499 rehabilitation program with an approved letter of intent, and I believe that there is a SWIFT plan that has been submitted. Looking at the report card here, we see that there are items rated U, which are expected to have a negative impact on performance, or NIOP. And these items are encroachments for all of the 4 segments, so Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then there are NIOP points, again, expected to have a negative impact on performance in the erosion category for the Unit 1 Steamboat Slough segment. And then there are NIOP points in the animal control category for Units 1 and 3. Next slide, please. So these are some examples of photos from our most recent inspection report. So picture 1 in the top left corner shows a pipe through the levee. So this was rated NIOP, and it is a 6-inch steel pipe, and it is open on both the waterside and landside slopes. There was no observed form of closure on this pipe. There is a permit associated with the pipe, permit 4581. And there is no video inspection for this pipe. And so due to the openness and lack of closure, it was rated the NIOP. In picture 2 in the top right, we have another NIOP rated point, so unacceptable. It is an animal burrow on the landside slope, and it is one of many on the landside slope at this location, up to 2 feet in diameter, with spoil piles greater than 2 feet observed. Clusters of burrows were observed at locations throughout the levee, so animal control was a continuing issue for this system. Picture 3 in the bottom left. So the first 2 pictures, were from Unit 1 Steamboat Slough. Picture 3 is from Unit 3 Miner Slough. So we have another pipe through the levee. So this is a 12-inch steel pipe that crosses through the levee. As you can see in the photo, that there has been a section of the pipe that has been cut off near the waterside slope. We have found no records of video inspection for this pipe, and this pipe is identified in both the O&M manual for the system as well as an as-built drawing. Lastly, we have picture 4 in the bottom right on Unit 4 Sutter Slough. It captures an unpaved access ramp and a retaining wall on the landside slope of the levee. The retaining wall is up to 5 feet tall at this location, and it cuts greater than 2 feet into the levee slope. We have no form of documentation for this wall, so we don't know if it's permitted. We could not identify it on any drawings. And so as a result, it has received an unacceptable NIOP designation as well. And this completes my portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Daniel, for those descriptions of those photos. So going into some of the details of this report card, The sections highlighted in green here have improved since the last inspection done in 2014 to the current inspection that we received this year. Note that, as Daniel said, the system is active in PL 8499, meaning that it's eligible for federal emergency assistance, as it has a draft SWIFT received by the Corps in August, and it has an approved letter of intent. So stepping through all of these improvements kind of fast, so whoever's clicking the slides. We have flood preparedness and training, that's improved for all 4 units. We have slope stability, which is improved for Unit 2 on Cache Slough. Animal control ratings have improved on Unit 4 Sutter Slough. We have sod cover, that's improved on all 3 units except for Minor Slough. And then cracking has improved for Unit 1 and Unit 2. And then on the next slide, I have some work that the board has been doing to help improve the system. So all of the locations marked with yellow, those are completed enforcement cases. We have a permitted pipe, a stand of Arundo removed. We'll have a photo of that later. Pipe that has been replaced, a pipe that's been removed. And then on the other side in the darker ink, we have some of the active enforcement cases being worked on by the board. So we have several pipes and then a dock and a retaining wall. And those are all currently active enforcement cases on this system. On this slide here, we have kind of a breakdown of the different unacceptable observations that are behind that report card. So as you can see, there's 316 total unacceptable observations for this district. However, there's a small subset of them that are they're also unacceptable, but they have the additional note that they're negative impact on performance, or NIOP. So if you look at the total number of NIOP observations, it's only 30, so it's a lot more manageable. The section that I'm a part of, the Deferred Encroachment Compliance section, was created to bring kind of awareness and then work with the landowners to get these 30 NIOP ratings for districts resolved, so that systems can either get eligible in PL 8499 or keep their eligibility. On the next slide. Okay, so this is the vegetation removal that I mentioned. This is one of the completed enforcement cases. So there's a stand of Arundo. We have a before picture and after picture. This was removed because the plant inhibits inspection of the levees. So if there's erosion or whatever going on the levee slopes, you can't see it. So they got it removed. So thank you to our enforcement section. And then here we have 2 of the unacceptable with negative impact on performance, NIOP, observations on the system. So this first image, this is a drainage pipe. It's 24-inch steel drainage pipe. It was marked as unacceptable with negative impact on performance because it's lacking a waterside closure device. It's also missing a video inspection. Some interesting things that I uncovered while looking into this is that the DWR's utility crossing inventory program notes that this pipe is okay, and it does have a flap gate. So I think some investigation is needed to get in there and see if it has a flap gate or not. From the photo, you can tell that the end of the pipe is underwater, so it's a little tricky to tell whether or not there's something on there or not. The second photo we have here is some excavation next to a permitted private irrigation system. I talked with the district in reviewing these photos. This photo was taken in 2022. Since then, this excavation has been filled in. So that's probably some kind of an improvement. But this photo is outdated at this point. Like people always mention with these inspections, they're a snapshot in time. And then next slide. Okay, so this photo here is of a 8-inch irrigation discharge pipe. This was marked as negative impact on performance as well, because as you can see from the photo on the right, it has holes in it. So This pipe is shown in the O&M manual, so it's kind of old. And that is my overview of the Army Corps inspection. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. We have the district engineer here, as well as the Corps. And do you know was Nick here? Okay, and Nick, the district superintendent, is here as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentations. Any questions from the board about the inspection? No? I see board member Countryman wanting to ask a question. Yes, please.
Joe Countryman, board member. Has the district provided a plan to correct these deficiencies?
I believe all of the deficiencies, there's a plan to correct them in the SWIFT. Let me know if, does that sound right? And there's a draft SWIFT, or system-wide improvement framework, for the system. So there's a draft plan.
There's a draft plan, but there's no immediate action, I guess.
Would you say that?
I'm happy to invite Chris Nudek up to talk. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Nudek with Kelson Sinek and Nudek, serves as the district engineer. So let me wheel that into what I'm going to speak. We also have Nick Zapeta, district superintendent, with me in the back. Just to address that specific question about whether the district has a plan, we do, because we have to, but these are private diversions. So it's always awkward when you work as a reclamation district to have to incorporate private improvements into a plan, but we do because we need to maintain the active status. The likeliness of these being repaired is because the state's enforcement actions are right behind us. So we note them and bring them to the attention of the landowner, do our best, don't get very far, enforcement comes into play, and here we are. So let me just give you a quick history on that one issue, because those are the most important ones. First of all, not a concern of mine whatsoever. Why? This levee has 6 to 12 feet of freeboard over the 100-year floodplain, over the 300-year, and 7.5 to 13.5 feet over the 100 years. So we're a very tall levee, and these pipes are up and over the top. So these pipes are not going to really impact a flood. Nevertheless, they're still an issue because they do pump water or divert water that can erode the levee during the course of that action. That's number one. Number two, why are these pipes kind of in such a disarray on a district this big? This district has gone through a major transition in land ownership. Historically, it's been owned by 2 major landowners, Islands Inc., which is owned by the Nixon family, and then Hamilton family. Nixon family sold to International Farming Company. It's over 6,500 acres, over 50% of the district. Everything went along pretty fairly well because you had one landowner. So you're really only talking to one entity. That's now since changed. International Farming Company is pulling out, and they're selling off parcels, 2, 3, 4, 500 acres at a part. And these landowners are coming in totally ignorant to diversions and drainage. And they're going out, literally planting 400 to 500 acres of almonds and looking around going, well, how do I irrigate this? Not a very wise decision from a businessman's perspective, but they go over and say, oh, there's a pipe. Well, the pipe's got holes in it. Or the pump stand's falling down. Well, I'll stick a pipe through it, or I'll cut a hole in it, and I'll string a hose through it. I'll do all sorts of non-traditional methods. And that's where we run into problems, because these folks are not accustomed to doing work within the Delta region. So that's something that we're wrestling with. Nick, his primary job is to make sure that we manage that. And the state, Annalise and her staff, have been superb at helping us go through the enforcement actions. Furthermore, DCC Engineering out of Walnut Grove has been our primary engineering firm that's been preparing the plans and specifications to bring it back in compliance. And you can see the success rate of what we've done thus far. So I'm actually quite pleased standing up here with having an acceptable rating. Typically, I'm up here trying to scratch for, why we aren't doing things. It's a big island, 12,000 acres. We operate on about a $630,000 a year assessment. Our PG&E bills are out of control like every other reclamation district in the Delta. Nick is doing a fantastic job. One of the things we're finding now is trying to manage the incoming water and drainage when people are putting permanent crops in sub-sea level property. Typically, that wouldn't make any difference to some folks, but when you put in a permanent crop in a sub-sea level condition, you have to put in under drains, so tile drains. So you're pumping that much more groundwater into the drainage system. So we're finding ourselves having to manage that as well and trying to manage the PG&E bill. But generally speaking, I think the district is demonstrated by the report and by Daniel and Jeremiah is doing better, and we continue to work on that. Nick has recently been promoted in the last 2 years to superintendent. I think he's doing a fantastic job.
Do you receive subventions funds?
Yes, we do.
So the state's helping fund the,
Yep, as much as we can. We spend about, of that 630, we spend about $150,000 to $180,000 a year. So figure about a third of that income goes to levies. Yeah, so we take full advantage. But mind you, the one thing about RD 501, it's all force account work. So we do get a better bang for our buck. We don't use contract labor. As a general rule, we have maintenance staff, along with Nick also serving as some of our maintenance worker.
okay. All right, well, hopefully next time we come in here, the U's will be disappearing. So,
That's our goal. That's our goal. And furthermore, part of our SWIFT is to obviously go after those. I would construe those to be low-hanging fruit because it's something that's physical, it's mechanical, you can get to it. Some of these issues with encroachments, issues like you saw the retaining wall and things of that nature, those are a little bit more difficult to work through because you're working through someone's driveway, and it's a management issue with the landowner at those. But no, those are part of the SWIFT and matters that we'll be taking care of. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for shedding a little bit more light on how the land ownership has changed. I think that's that's a added complication, it seems like. I'm just wondering if is some opportunity for education, and even, including like our board staff coming and being a part of that.
Well, Member Bosworth, excellent question. So KSN is in the process, Kelson, Sinica, Nudek, of developing a guidance document. The board had this very same recommendation. So we're in our second draft of that guidance document, which refers to Title 23, but walks them through the steps to get into Title 23, tries to expose the cost of doing this work. This is not something you walk into lightly, but also expose the enforcement side of things if you don't take in consideration. So we've done the initial draft. We've got some initial comments. The district just hired a new legal counsel, so he's looking at it. But that document will be handed out to every single landowner by Nick for that very reason, just to try and educate them because they're just not, unfortunately, they're just not familiar with this. So, but good idea, and we're on it.
Sounds like it's in progress. Great.
We're on it, yeah.
Ahead
Thank
of
goodness.
us. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for being
You're welcome.
here. And
Thank you for
thanks
the
your
opportunity.
presentation. Okay.
All right, have a good day.
All right. We are moving on. Okay, so we are moving, oh, sorry. Is there any other public comment on item 8A?
Thank you very much.
All right, yeah, if not, thank you, Mr. Peak and Mr. Sparks for being here today. Thank you, appreciate it. We're going to move on to 9A. Again, this will be placed on the consent calendar for next month. Just a little bit, we heard this extensively at the last hearing. So this is really just bringing back the language again, which was the request of the board at the last meeting. And I will turn it over to our board staff for the presentation.
Good morning, Member Bosler, members of the board. My name is Sarah Backus. I'm staff. Better? My name is Sarah Backus. I'm staff attorney for the board. I'm here with Angeles Caliso, and we're here to present to you the revised enforcement order from last month's hearing. Also present is the respondent, Mr. Terrifard, and he has just advised me his attorney is not present. Next slide, please. So the staff is requesting that the board adopt revised enforcement order number 2026-1, which reflects the board's decision at the last meeting. And these were the violations that were identified in the cease and desist order that was issued to Mr. Terrifard last fall. And at last month, at the hearing, both Mr. Terrifard and his attorney were present and had the opportunity to address the board. And you'll remember that the board had a long discussion of it and unanimously agreed to revise the proposed enforcement order that had been proposed by staff. And this, next slide please, this enforcement order that the board voted on last month was that, next slide, I missed that one, was that respondent was ordered to submit a complete application package within 90 days for the boat dock, the fence, and all other unpermitted encroachments on the property, and that he pay a $50,000 penalty within 60 days, which is required by water code. It does not require that he remove the boat dock. And the board last month requested that we come back this month and present the revised order for adoption. Now, as I understand it, the board's going to hear this and defer voting until next month due to the potential notice issues. Next slide, please. So for this particular proceeding, as you know, because the board's decision was substantially different than what had been proposed by the staff, we were requested to come back this month with the revised order. These revised conclusions and order do not reopen this hearing. This is in Title 23, Section 13.1I. Public comment at this meeting is restricted to whether the order that is being proposed by the board, the revised order, reflects what the board did and does not reopen the hearing. These conclusions will be effective if 4 board members vote to uphold them. And any board member who was not present at the last meeting, as long as they have familiarized themselves with the order and with the proceedings, is entitled to vote at this time. And just to remind Mr. Terrifard and others that the revised, the order is effective as of the time of the initial vote, which was June 26th. Okay, according to the Water Code, the factors that the board took into consideration last month were the nature and circumstances, extent, and gravity of the violation, whether the violation could be removed, modified, abated, restored, or remediated, whether the function of the levee channel or other flood control work is affected by the violation, the cost to the state in bringing the action, voluntary remedial actions, prior history, degree of culpability, possible economic profits obtained by the respondent in not complying, and any other relevant factors. So based upon these factors last month, the board determined that a $50,000 administrative penalty, next slide please. Oh, you got it, never mind, you did it already, thank you. A $50,000 administrative fee was appropriate because in aggravation, the violations were significant, and we're knowing that 14 violations remained from the 24 that were identified in the CDO, and that the respondent is culpable for the violations, and also that there was significant cost to the state in bringing the action. However, in mitigation, the board discussed that 10 violations had been resolved, and that the boat dock does not appear, or the violations that have been identified do not appear to have immediately affected the levee channel or other flood control work. And so that was the reason the board decided on the $50,000 penalty. So the revised order that's been presented to the board reflects these determinations, and I will turn it over to Angeles to give you a recap. Sorry. Here you go. Thank you.
Good morning. Angeles Calizo, Board Enforcement Section Manager. Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, Board Member Bossler. I had my script written for a veteran speaker and the rest of the board, and welcome to Mr. DeVue to the board. I will give you a sort of little summary for the benefit of people who were not present at the last hearing. So quickly, we'll start with the property, where the property is located. So orienting the people here is the audience is that the property is located at 2931 Garden Highway. It is located in Sacramento County. It is bounded by a federal levee to the right and the Sacramento River to the left. And the encroachments that were subject to the board's order included the boat dock, the 3 piles that were in the channel, a conduit on the waterside berm, and a parallel fence that was located on the waterside shoulder of the levee. Next, so this is a photo showing the boat dock, and then this photo is showing that's it. They know that they already know the flow of the presentations. They're moving quickly. So then this is the fence that was in question, part of the enforcement action. Okay, next slide, please. So now covering some of the communication that has taken place since the board's hearing on June 26th. So on July 1st of this year, just earlier this month, the respondent's engineer did submit an application that was for encroachments that were identified in the cease and desist order. That was for the boat dock and the encroachments that I just covered. On July 2nd, enforcement staff sent the decision letter to the respondent and his attorney, laying out the board's decision from the June hearing, and then providing guidance on the next steps and timelines that were to be complied with. On July 6th, the respondent and his attorney responded to the hearing letter, did request to address the board, and hence this is part of the reason why this matter is before you here, or was intended to be before you here as an item of discussion rather than a consent item. And then on July 8th, the board's permitting staff sent an incomplete letter to the respondent that identified several missing items of the submittal. A few of those that are noted here were the application review fee, the local maintaining agency endorsement, geotechnical information that was necessary to support the retaining wall, CEQA documentation, and name changes that were also missing. And we understand as of yesterday afternoon, the fees were submitted by the respondent, and so staff is processing those. Next slide. Yeah, okay, thank you. So on July 10th, Ms. Backus did reach out to the respondent's attorney, offering to meet and to provide clarity or assistance on the board's direction. No response was received. On July 14th, the board revised enforcement order with the staff report were provided to the respondent. They were mailed via certified mail, and to his attorney as well. Electronic copies of those documents were also submitted. Between July 15th and the 17th, there was communications. I feel like the speaker is too close. There were several email communications between the respondent and the board's permitting staff regarding some of the permitting fees. And then on July 15th, copies of the July board meeting agenda were provided to the respondent and his attorney. And that brings us to today. So now we'll cover the CEQA analysis that are part of the enforcement, the proposed enforcement order for the board to consider that the adoption of this enforcement order is an administrative action that is meant to address the unauthorized encroachments by requiring compliance with board standards. The order requires the submittal of a complete application for future review and approval, but it does not authorize any ground disturbing activities. Because the board retains the discretion to conduct a full CEQA review and evaluate the environmental impacts when a permit application is eventually considered by the board, the immediate action of adopting the board order is categorically exempt under CEQA. And this exemption falls under CEQA, under the Public Resources Code, Section 210-84, and Title 14, Section 15-321 of the California Code of Regulations. Next slide, please. So the following findings were made within the order that was presented to you and that was shared in the packet. First one, finding that the respondent, as the current property owner of 2931 Garden Highway, with the APN number of 225-021-031-0000, that is in Sacramento County, is responsible and liable for all unauthorized encroachments identified in the cease and desist order. And to wit, That is the boat dock, the 3 pylons, conduit fence that were located on RD 1000, Unit 1, Sacramento River Federal Levee, and the channel. That is a facility of the State Plan of Flood Control. Number 2, an adoption of the enforcement order number 2026-01 is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA under the Public Resources Code Section 21084 and California Code of Regulations Title 14, Section 15321. Number 3, the facts and conclusions that were provided in the enforcement hearing staff report and its attachments and as modified by the board at the enforcement hearing on June 26, 2026 are true and correct. Next slide, please. Number 4, the facts and conclusion as provided by the CDO that was affirmed by the board on September 26, 2025, and as modified by the enforcement hearing staff report and the enforcement hearing are true and correct. And number 5, the respondent has failed to correct all the violations that were required by the CDO and as provided in the staff enforcement hearing and the staff report. Next slide, please. And so therefore, the order that is before the board to consider is Enforcement Order 2026-01 revised based on the findings from last month. That the first order of that document is that the board finds that let me go back. Staff recommends that the board adopt the Enforcement Order 2026-01 that requires the respondent to submit a complete application within 90 days of the enforcement hearing that was held on June 26, 2026. That would cover all the encroachments that were identified in the CDO, that included the dock, the conduit fence, and any additional unpermitted encroachments on the property. Number 2, or item B on the order, is that the board adopts and incorporates by reference the facts and conclusions that were modified in the enforcement hearing and the staff report and in the enforcement hearing. Item C, that the board incorporates by reference the facts and conclusions that were set forth in the CDO that was affirmed by the board on September 26, 2025, excuse me, and as modified by the facts and conclusions as provided in the enforcement hearing staff report and the June 26, 2026 enforcement hearing. Item D, that the respondent shall pay $50,000 in total administrative penalties for the remaining 14 violations as detailed in the enforcement hearing staff report. The administrative penalties shall be paid no later than 60 days after the enforcement hearing was held on June 26, 2026, and as required by California Water Code Section 8704.1c. In determining these administrative penalties, the board considered the factors that were set forth under California Water Code Section 8704c and adopts the findings that were contained in the staff report prepared for the enforcement hearing and staff report prepared for this board meeting, the July 24, 2026 meeting. Next slide, please. If the respondent fails to comply with the board's enforcement order requiring that he submit an encroachment application for all unauthorized encroachments within the 90 days of the enforcement hearing that was held on June 26, 2026, as required, or he does not comply, or he does not respond timely to complete the application process and request for additional information, the board may consider additional penalties and the removal of the encroachments and restoration of the RD 1000 Sacramento River levee and the waterside berm to Title 23 standards. The respondent is strongly encouraged to allow board staff to inspect the property, provide technical assistance for identification of additional unpermitted encroachments that should be included in the application. Furthermore, the board may take the action to recover the cost performing the repair, amongst other remedies. That includes placing the lien on the respondent's property pursuant to California Water Code Section 8701.4F and 8704.2. Item F, should the respondent not pay the administrative penalties and after the time has passed for judicial review, the staff shall apply to the clerk of the Sacramento County Superior Court for a judgment to collect the penalties assessed pursuant to California Water Code Section 8704.1E. And staff shall thereafter take any and all available actions to enforce the judgment. And lastly, the staff is directed to file a copy of this enforcement order with Sacramento County Recorder's Office. Next slide, please. So thus finally, the staff is recommending that the board adopt the order as presented in the staff report as Exhibit A, Enforcement Order 2026-01, and direct the executive officer to take all the necessary actions to implement the enforcement order. Take any questions? Thank you.
going to turn it to the board for any questions about what was brought back after extensive discussion at last board meeting.
Just,
Board Member Countryman.
just to be clear, that this will be put on consent next month unless the permittee has objection or something.
Sarah Backus, Staff Counsel. Member Countryman, the code requires that the action that the board took last month was final as of June 26th, 2026. Today's hearing, we believed that there would be action taken today, but because of the website issues, that's why we're deferring it to consent next month. Mr. Terrafard and his attorney, or Mr. Terrafard, requested to be able to come before the board today, but just to, so that's the reason that it was on for a hearing this morning, as opposed to a consent item. But just to remind Mr. Terrafard, if he wants to speak, that it is really limited to whether or not the enforcement order, the revised enforcement order reflects what the board decided in June. So it doesn't reopen the hearing today.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions from the board? If not, I'd like to invite Mr. Terrafard, if you would like to come to the podium.
Hi. Thank you to the board, board members for allowing me to come back and speak today.
Mr. Terrafard, could you please state your name for the record?
Podder Terraford. I guess I wasn't really sure what I was coming into as far as like what we're doing. I don't have my lawyer with me. I'm burnt out on this whole process. I've been gone through hell for 10 months. I have burned all my money, hence why I do not have my lawyer here. He's not a very cheap lawyer. So that's why I'm here today, and I'll start my speech, and whatever you guys do, I don't really understand it, but whatever we got to do. At the last board meeting, I was given 90 days to submit a new permit application. I had that permit application submitted within 3 business days. I paid the $3,000 earlier this month, and apparently they're just now getting the check. So, that's just one example of, it goes to show how slow the process is, that they haven't even cashed the check yet that I mailed out 2-3 weeks ago. So, if anybody's slowing down this process, it's not me. I was forced to pay another $3,000 permit fee and the $300 transfer permits, which I paid. This is on top of me already paying $3,000 permit fee back in 2023. I still don't understand why that application couldn't simply be updated instead of forcing me to start all over and in the back of the line. I paid because I wanted this process to move forward. The board also gave me 90 days, which I'm now hearing it's 60 days, to pay a $50,000 penalty. And this is basically why I'm here today. I do not have $50,000 to pay, nor do I believe I should pay it. This is an insanely high fine for what it actually is. I am a civilian. I'm not a business owner. I'm not a massive farmer with hundreds of acres, digging holes in the levee. I simply built a dock at my home. Nobody was hurt, no property was damaged, everything was built to code, and it cost nobody, including the government or my neighbors, any money. Obviously, it costs you guys staff money, but they decided to take that on themselves. I never needed to come to this. This fine was based on outrageous and absurd fines proposed by the staff. The same staff that illegally collapsed this process and married a fine with my ability to obtain a permit. The same staff who used coercive tactics in an attempt to intimidate me into paying what amounted to extortionate fines. The same staff who spent 9 months wasting your time, my time, taxpayer dollars, in my own money, only to accomplish absolutely nothing. We're basically where we started back in September of last year. Why do I believe this fine is not justified? Because I have already paid the price tenfold. If this is about punishment, you guys have punished me way harder than this should have ever gotten. I should have never had to hire a lawyer to defend my rights and prove that the staff was acting outside their legal authority. Attorney's fees alone have cost me over $50,000, not including the psychological toll this has taken on my life and my business. If $50,000 fine had been presented 10 months ago, this would have been a completely different story. Instead, this number was reached because the staff failed to do their jobs, and I appreciate that we finally got some kind of number out of it and we had some kind of finality. But unfortunately, that number was based on incorrect reporting and lies. For example, 3 of the 24 violations, some that were presented today, were for conduit. They had the conduit box highlighted in multiple pictures. The problem is that's not conduit at all. It's a float that every gangway on the river has. I have about 40 of these floats underneath my dock. I would think these experts would know the difference between a float and conduit. So I ask, what am I actually being cited for on that particular part? Now, if this fine was something reasonable, I probably wouldn't even bring this up because it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah, Mr. Terraford, we aren't relitigating the hearing that we had last month. So if you could just stick to what's before us today, which is the revised order that came back.
Why I'm bringing this stuff up is because the information that was put in front of this board was incorrect, and that's why I'm bringing it back up. So I'm worried that the decision was based off of incorrect information, and so $50,000 is still a lot of money. Like we're throwing out these $1 million fine here, $200,000 fine here, like it's nothing. Like I have
I can assure you we take the level of the penalty very seriously, and many of these things are dictated by the water code, just as a matter of course. But we take it very seriously. We understand the hardship.
I appreciate that, but I was also given an $840,000 penalty. That's also water code too. It doesn't mean it's justified or correct, with all due respect. Well, if that's the case, I have no speech. I have no lawyer here to say what I can say. I think $50,000, if it was presented to me, $50,000 almost a year ago, 10 months ago, okay, fine. You know what? A mistake was made, not on purpose. I got all the other permits. State Lands gave me a permit for this dock. So, if it was presented to me before I lost over $100,000 because of this, before I had more gray hairs than I started with, this has ruined my life. This is wrong. What has happened by what this staff has put me through is unexcusable. Give me a fine like everybody else, like a normal fine. And there wouldn't have been an issue, but I've already burned the money. Why do I not have a lawyer here today? I cannot afford to keep paying for a lawyer to come over here, and I'm out of money. I don't have $50,000, and what if I can't pay it in 60 days? You're going to take my home from me? Are you serious? This is how this operates? You guys are here to stop floods, not to ruin people's lives. You want to make an example? This is not the person to make an example. It was an accident what happened. I put in for everything. Things happen. I don't know the process of this. Things happen. Guess what? There's going to be more mistakes. You can't just go running through and ruin, at least not the board, but your staff can't go through ruining people's lives and thinking, oh, we're going to make an example. That's the same logic as saying, hey, if you get in a car accident, we're going to throw you in prison, and thinking that's going to stop car accidents. It's the same logic. This was an accident. I did not I did not want this to happen. I did not try. That's why I have a permit. I paid for a permit with Central Valley Flood. It didn't get finished. I was building a house at the time. I don't have $50,000. At the end of the day, I don't have $50,000. So are you telling me in 30 days, you're going to take my home away from me? Or as Ann-Halise will state, they're going to come do an audit and seize my assets? You're going to take my cars, my boats? Is that really what we're going to do? Because that's what's been told to me. So I don't have $50,000. So whether we get on a payment plan over the next 30 years or give me a reasonable fine, considering I've already burned so much money based on the mistakes that they have made. That's what I'm saying. That's what I thought that we were here for. Obviously, I'm wrong. And, it's not like staff's going to give me any kind of good advice. They're working against me. This is a fight for my life. For them, they're just trying to bury me. So, I'm obviously passionate about this because this has been 10 years. None of you understand. This has been 10 months of my life spending tens of thousands of dollars into probably loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars over what? Over me missing a permit? Okay, I'm getting the permit. I'm finishing what I started. I'm sorry I did that. I'm willing to pay a penalty, but I don't have $50,000. I may have had it 10 months ago. I no longer have it. It's all gone to lawyer fees and whatever else. So, ask me any questions. I don't really.
Any questions from the board? Any further follow-up?
Can we get on a payment plan? Or are they trying to put a lien on my pretty much dream home?
Brian, I'm going to ask Board Member Johnson. He's got his hands up, and he's remote.
Oh.
Brian?
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I got a note that flashed up on my screen about being muted or unmuted. I just wanted to comment to thank you, Mr. Terrifard, for coming here, and also to thank our staff for the work that went into the staff report and the revised permit. I know this is really hard. We had an extensive discussion last month and made pretty substantial revisions to the staff report. And because I was preparing the minutes and thought I would be presiding over the meeting, I worked with staff as they prepared the staff report and the revised order. And I went back and checked the transcript and went through it all, and just wanted to note that I'm confident that it accurately reflects the decision we made last month. Thank you.
Brian, you might be frozen. Did you finish? Sorry.
I did. Did I freeze along the way?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have anything? No, okay. Any other comments by board members? Yes.
I don't know the legal thing here, but I hear what you're saying, and if it's legally possible to have a payment plan, I would be all for that. I don't see, for the type of penalty that we have here, the work that was done, it seems reasonable that he could be able to pay over time or something, but if it's not, then it's not. I don't know.
Could I ask our lawyer to comment on that?
Certainly. Jeet Dua, Board Counsel. So water code requires payment within 60 days. It doesn't discuss payment plans or deferred payment. That being said, although it's due, whether staff moves forward with, putting a lien on his property to satisfy that payment, or not to satisfy, but a lien against the property in case that payment is not satisfied. Certainly, if he is complying, staff could delay that process. And if things bog down for some reason, then they could obviously move forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I think that, myself, I'm very buoyed that you have come in through the front door with the permit, within 3 days of our last board meeting. And, my intent and what I would support is that our staff, work with you in a collaborative way to address the penalty.
Can I wish the staff would work with me, but they're unfortunately working against me. This is not a collaborative thing. The permit's been ready. My as-built drawings were done back in December. Like, I could have submitted this thing January, February easily, but we're getting delayed on top of delays, and I feel like it's being done on purpose. There is no collaboration here. So, I mean, take it as you will, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Thank you for coming today.
So what do we come back
So
next
there
month?
will be a vote on the revised order as presented today at the next hearing.
And if we keep this, so there will be a lien placed on my house if I don't have $50,000
I think what I just
in 30
heard
days.
from our attorney is that you are moving through the permit process, which is to remediate things that have already been done. The penalty is to reflect that this is a very out of order process. In doing that, as long as we're making good progress, there is flexibility within the board, the staff to be able to provide provisions for payment for different, working collaboratively with you about the penalty as well. But the penalty is part of the official order.
Got it. Well, I'll be back with my lawyer next month, hopefully. And no? Oh, all right. Well, all right. We'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. Is that it?
I don't think we have anything else, but thank you. Thank you for coming.
Public comment.
Is there any public comment on this enforcement order, 9A? All right. Again, we are putting 9B over until next month. So we will move now. Does anyone need a 5-minute break? Should we do a 5-minute break? Let's do 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 10:30. Thank you. Okay, we are going to go ahead and reconvene. Thank you for the quick break. I am now going to hand the presentation. Just a reminder that 9B is being moved to next month. We will have an opportunity for full public comment then. And we did offer public comment at item 6 today for those that attended in person today. Moving to 9C, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Buckley. Welcome, Andrea.
Good morning, board members. Good morning, board members. Board Member Bosler. My name is Andrea Buckley. I'm Deputy Executive Officer here at the board, but I am also the manager of the Natural Resource Management and Planning Division. Today, we'll be providing an overview on how the Natural Resources and Management and Planning Division is implementing the board's strategic plan through our day-to-day work and longer-term initiatives. Rather than discussing the strategic plan at a high level today, we will be focusing on implementation and how our staff are translating the board's goals into tangible actions that advance flood risk reduction throughout the Central Valley. And I'll begin with some background on the strategic plan to get us all up to date, And then today's approach will be a presentation by Jamie Silva, Environmental Services and Land Management Branch, and Christine Van Skyke, who is our member in the Flood Planning and Programs Branch. They will be highlighting examples of their respective branches that demonstrate how these goals are being put into practice. Next slide, please. As a reminder, the board originally adopted the first strategic plan in 2013, but with the most current version that we'll be discussing today in last November. At its core, the strategic plan provides a clear vision, mission, and a set of priorities that guide the agency. Our mission is straightforward: to reduce the risks of catastrophic flooding to people and property in California's Central Valley. We accomplish that mission in many ways, from implementing the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, serving as the state's non-federal sponsor for major flood risk reduction projects, and fulfilling our regulatory and land management responsibilities, and collaborating with local, state, federal, and our tribal partners. We also promote projects that deliver both flood risk reduction and ecosystem benefits.
Ms. Buckley, I just wanted, before I started, I have some good notes from Brian about how he wanted to introduce this section. This is a time for the board members to be collaborative. Some of you weren't here when the strategic plan was put together last year. So this is a time for, asking questions and just being able to really reevaluate the words that we put down a little over a year ago. I think it still reads very well, but I'm looking forward to the feedback from others.
Thank you, Board Member Bosler. Next slide, please. So to achieve our mission, the strategic plan establishes 3 overarching goals. First, preserving and improving the integrity and function of the Central Valley Flood Risk Reduction System. Second, supporting effective planning and implementation of projects and system-wide improvements to provide multiple benefits. And third, providing leadership through collaboration and partnerships that advance flood risk reduction across the Central Valley. Every program here at the board contributes to one or more of these goals. Today's presentation highlights how natural resource management and planning divisions implement these priorities through planning, environmental stewardship, partnership development, and project support. Next slide, please. As a quick reminder, the Executive Office is organized into 3 divisions: the Administrative Division, Engineering Division, and our division here, Natural Resource Management and Planning. Over the next coming months, we'll be briefing the board from each of these branches' implementation plans, so you can see how the strategic goals are being translated in meaningful work across the organization. Today, we'll be focusing on our 2 branches, Natural Resource Management and Planning Divisions, Environmental Services and Land Management, and Flood Planning and Development. Jamie Silva will begin with Environmental and Land Management, followed by Christine. And with that, next slide, we'll be turning it over to Jamie to begin Environmental and Land Management.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, board members. My name is Jamie Silva. I'm the program manager over the Environmental and Land Management branch. Next slide, please. So the branch is comprised of 2 sections. You'll see here environmental services and land management. I'm happy to say that our branch is fully staffed at this point. And if you all want to stand up, Environmental Services is fully staffed with 4 senior environmental scientist specialists, including executing our tribal liaison responsibilities, fulfilled by our newest environmental scientist, Brian Luke. We also have land management, who is supported by a Supervisory 1 specialist, as well as a senior right-of-way agent, the board funds, which sits organizationally in the Department of Water Resources Real Estate Branch, that manages property the Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District holds. Thank you, everyone. Next slide, please. So we'll hop into goal 1. So again, it's preserve and improve the integrity and function of the flood risk reduction systems in the Central Valley. Next slide, please. So the strategic plan identified 6 objectives how the board achieves goal 1, 4 of which are applicable to this branch. So you'll see here their objectives 1.1 through 1.4. So the branch prioritizes 3 key areas to meet these objectives. First, by implementing regulatory efficiency by standardizing and streamlining environmental review, improve coordination and collaboration with federal, state, and local partners, develop CEQA documents that are legally defensible and environmentally compliant, and implement quality control and assurance protocols. Secondly, engage with California Native American tribes, utilizing consultation procedures and best practices in alignment with the board's tribal consultation policy, and explore opportunities under the California Natural Resources Agency's tribal stewardship policy. And third, management of the Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District by implementing the property abatement program more effectively, optimizing lease renewals, and enhancing real estate data tools. Next slide, please. Since board staff presented last to the board at the December workshop, we wanted to share a few highlights as to how staff activities fulfill objectives applicable to Goal 1. At the January board meeting, the board adopted Resolution 2026-01, which adopts the California Natural Resources Agency's tribal consultation policy as our own. The board's tribal liaison incorporates the policy's best practices into board's processes when consulting with California Native American tribes. Board staff have implemented various improvements since we last came before the board in March to discuss impacts of the unhoused community and the state's roles and responsibilities. The board adopted Resolution 2026-02, which adopted the SSJDD Property Abatement Program policy. In support of expanding that program, staff have been working diligently to revamp the program's application process and conduct more outreach and engagement to local cities and counties for participation to move from a reactive to proactive approach when addressing impacts on our fee-owned property. Additionally, we've created a landing page on the board's website specifically for the land management section. Members of the public now have a resource to help them navigate when a license is required for their project, an interactive viewer to understand the SSJDD's real estate portfolio, as well as information on the abatement program. Next slide, please. Building upon our presentation at the February workshop, board staff convened 3 separate listening sessions with the restoration community to kick off our 3 distinct initiatives focusing on board procedural updates, resolution between flowage and conservation easements, and Title 23 rulemaking to update our regulations with restoration and multi-benefits in mind. These were held in hybrid format and were well attended. Board staff is currently assessing the feedback we received, working on scheduling follow-up meetings and potential site visits in the future. Next slide, please. One noteworthy update we'd like to mention is the successful permitting of the Patrick Shea Conservation Bank. This was a first for the board to act as CEQA lead, utilizing the statutory exemption for restoration projects under CEQA that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife implements under the Cutting the Green Tape program. Board staff led consultation with California Native American tribes and was the first time that the board incorporated permit conditions as a result of tribal consultation. This conservation bank provides riparian and valley elderberry longhorn beetle acreage credits for purchase to offset a project's impacts. In a time when habitat credits are in dire need, the board was able to utilize existing permitting pathways to advance restoration projects. And I want to give a special shout out to our partners Wildlands and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Next slide, please. So goal 2. We have support effective planning for projects, regional actions, and system-wide improvements for multi-benefit flood risk reduction actions. Next slide, please. So the strategic plan identified 5 objectives, how the board achieves goal 2, 4 of which are applicable to this branch. The branch prioritizes 2 key areas to meet these objectives, which include advancing restoration and multi-benefit projects, and implementing climate adaptation by integrating climate vulnerability, adaptation strategies, and natural and nature-based features into environmental reviews and levee project design. Next slide, please. At the February workshop, board staff, along with advisory committee workgroup leads, presented recommendations that advance multi-benefit and restoration projects within the Central Valley. This builds upon the efforts of previous iterations of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and the conservation strategy's measurable objectives. Since then, February work groups are meeting to develop work plans and strategize how to implement these recommendations. They are leveraging other board members, such as Board Member Bosler, to lean on their institutional support to support recommendations such as establishing a state revolving loan fund specifically for time-sensitive land acquisitions or one for CVFPP actions. In partnership with the board's Flood Planning and Programs branch, our state partner, the Department of Water Resources, local partners, and federal partners, the branch supports the Yolo Bypass Comprehensive Study. This study seeks to develop a comprehensive management plan for the Yolo Bypass, as well as a feasibility level evaluation. The branch supports this effort by providing technical environmental input and review. Tribal support, as the Army Corps of Engineer, navigates their Section 106 consultation under the National Historic Preservation Act and investigating opportunities for tribal access and co-management within the region. Next slide, please. Goal 3. So we have here, provide leadership and promote and participate in collaborative partnerships. Next slide. So the strategic plan identified 6 objectives how board achieves goal 3, 4 of which are applicable to this branch. So we prioritized 2 key areas to meet these objectives by participating in interagency forums, executing our responsibility of the board's tribal liaison by facilitating tribal requests as part of the Army Corps' Section 408 consultation under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, facilitating repatriations and reinterments, and finding opportunities for access and co-management. And lastly, engaging in various public outreach opportunities. Next slide, please. So see here on this slide is only but of an example of the interagency and collaboration and work groups that the branch and board staff participate. So you see here, Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee. I myself sit on the Restoration Subcommittee. We have the Delta Levees Habitat Advisory Committee, the Army Corps' Regulatory Mitigation Interagency Review Team, as well as our Army Corps federal partners, state partners, Department of Water Resources, and our locals such as SAFCA to plan large flood risk reduction projects. We also participate in Cutting the Green Tape monthly coordinations and multi-agency and local coordination meetings to address impacts from the unhoused. Next slide, please. So state initiatives that overlap and complement actions proposed in the branch's implementation plan include the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan 2027 update, the Advisory Committee, Floodplain Forward, the 30 by 30 initiative, Cutting the Green Tape, Healthy Rivers and Landscapes Program, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, the California Natural Resources Tribal Consultation and Tribal Stewardship Policies, and the Governor's Statement of Administration Policy and Native American Ancestral Lands. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation today, and I'll pause to take any questions.
Any questions from the board? Any comments from the board? Board Member Andrews.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how much we appreciate all of the staff's participation in these efforts. We haven't a chance through venues like the advisory committee to work very closely with each of you and to benefit from the kind of leadership and support that you provide to our partners who are really essential to making change out on the landscape. And we appreciate everything that you do and the spirit that you bring to it all. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I want to add, I think that there's so much good work in here, and we're not done. Like especially regarding the unhoused community in our areas. I think making sure that people who are doing things like have agency to understand the ownership patchwork that's out there is really, really important. And I'm really glad that we're taking that first step. and there's still a whole lot more to do that has really not been funded in the same way that encampment resolution has been on our roadways. And so that's an issue that I know that I want to continue to look for more creative solutions because the waterways are incredibly important and there's some real damage that's been done. So appreciate all of this, and also just there's more to do.
Thank you, board members. Now I'll invite Christine Van Skyke on Flood Planning and Programs Branch.
Thank you. All right. This is a great conversation. I'm glad to follow Jamie's presentation and the great work that their branch does. Thank you, Andrea, and Member Bosler, members of the board, and welcome, Member DeBoo. We're glad to have you here. Again, my name is Christine Van Skyke. I'm a program manager in the Flood Planning and Programs branch. I am the only staff member in the branch at this time. My role is to maintain momentum and engagement and communications for long-range flood planning with our federal, state, regional, and local partners on several large planning efforts and initiatives that affect the Central Valley in our work. The role of the Flood Planning and Programs branch is to align board strategic priorities with long-range flood planning so that the board is well represented. Keeping our eye on future flood risks and making informed strategic decisions with our partner is part of the way that the Flood Planning and Programs branch supports the strategic plan, and we work together to make sure that we understand what that groundwork is required for future flood risk reduction, opportunities for multi-benefit projects, programs, and policies that help to support the work we do. I helped position the board to secure and leverage federal funding with my teammates. We are the non-federal sponsor at the board to represent these planning efforts at the federal level, which help to encourage interest in our valley and in these critical areas for which we need federal, state, and local funding alignment and support. Next slide, please. So as Jamie and Andrea mentioned, our 3 goals in the strategic plan focus on improving integrity and function of the system, supporting projects and planning, and providing critical leadership in partnerships to advance flood risk reduction efforts. The Flood Planning and Programs branch supports long-range planning, prioritizing communication and engagement, and leads key partnerships and planning efforts in the region. Next slide, please. Listed on the screen are several of the major program activities supported by the board, and I will highlight a few of these later in my presentation. This represents the work that the Flood Planning and Programs branch does, and as has been established to help support these critical efforts for the region, regional flood management planning, our alignment with the U.S. Comprehensive Study, the Yolo-Pipes-Cashlu Partnership comprised of 16 agencies, and the recently published master plan for that region, highlighting critical need and work that we continue to focus on doing. As you said, Member Bosler, there's more work to do. All right, next slide, please. For strategic goal number 1, the Flood Planning and Program branch does support our operations and engineering units to make sure that they are provided with the communication, engagement, and inform them of what's needed for these major planning efforts. For the environmental team, I provide early planning input so that they can help to align us with those initiatives when they start out to make sure that we're in line with multi-benefit goals and regulatory requirements. And planning, the Flood Planning and Programs branch also is responsible on the board's behalf for flagging issues in planning stages and staying engaged in regional partnerships to help reduce redundancies, to improve permitting efficiencies, and support long-term strategic priorities for the board. Next slide, please. As Jamie mentioned and Member Andrews mentioned, when it's many of our priorities for keeping our engaged and committed to our regional and local members of the community and in this critical region is to support these committees and partnerships that we've formed with those partners. And as you see on the screen, we advanced strategic goal 1 by coordinating and participating in these key committees that strengthen transparency, regional engagement, and align flood management planning. The branch supports bi-monthly advisory and coordinating committees, contributes to the regional flood management planning efforts, and leads the YOLO Bypass Cash Loop Partnership Organizing Committee. The board invests in these committees to give our partners a consistent place to engage, to build trust, and work through issues collaboratively. They create a steady flow of communication that supports informed region-wide decision-making. Next slide, please. For strategic goal number 2, the Flood Planning and Programs branch provides steady day-to-day support that keeps the CVFPP, our Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, update moving forward in a coordinated and transparent way. The branch participates monthly in the project development team and communication coordination, ensuring that the board's priorities are fully integrated into technical development and outreach planning. The Flood Planning and Programs branch develops agendas, staff reports, newsletters, and presentation materials supporting board engagement at bi-monthly meetings and workshop briefings, presentations at conferences like Floodplain Management Association to support the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and the goals that are contained within to help keep that communication and information flowing. This year, we focused on pulling key regional flood management planning information into the plan so local priorities show up clearly in statewide planning. We also expanded outreach for the 2026-2027 cycle planning for those communication and engagement opportunities, get ready for briefings, webinars, and listening sessions. All of this helps keep DWR, consultants, communications, and the board aligned and prepared for those major milestones. Next slide, please. Here you'll see on the screen our team at the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan 2027 update came to the board meeting last month and presented on the status of the development of the plan, sharing these key components of the effort. The team will be continuing to provide bi-monthly updates to the board throughout the public release, and in 2027 we will have more focused workshops and briefings in order to finalize the plan. Next slide, please. Also shared at the last meeting by the team, this is a tentative schedule targeting public release in early 2027. On the slide, we're just entering Q3 in 2026 and expect board adoption at the end of 2027. And this team will be back next month for another update, so we'll look forward to hearing more about their progress. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Christine?
Yes.
Before we move on, one question I have, because I've been a part of a lot of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan planning meetings. But one thing I'm wondering, I mean, I feel like it's possible that we're doing a lot of talking to each other in the flood community, but we're not including others that are in other conversations with other plans in our region. To have like really robust conversations about how transportation planners, housing planners, ecosystem restoration planners, like are all thinking about their different priorities in the regions and like how they relate or don't relate to our plan. I just think those conversations are useful for more alignment in these regions. And obviously groundwater management is another area in the San Joaquin especially, but throughout the Central Valley. I just encourage us to think more broadly about our preparation, because we're doing so much detailed work. DWR is doing so much detailed work along with the flood board staff, but I just think that the more conversations we can get across political jurisdictions, across other program areas, like the better that we can get alignment around the places where there may be conflicts, and we can really start to zero in on those and think through collaboratively like how to solve for them. I don't know, just a thought I had. But any other questions before I let her move on?
Well, thank you for that comment. Yeah, I do want to also reiterate that I do participate in the project delivery team for the CVFPP 2027 update and in the communication and engagement efforts through the regional flood management planning. That team is doing a lot of like offline work, working closely with those regional management representation, for which they hopefully bring to the table their regional and local priorities in those group settings where we provide that avenue. And I'm encouraged that the team will hear your comments, and we will continue to work towards that collaborative approach to make this plan as robust as possible and provide that opportunity to include those important features or to identify those barriers in the valley.
Yes.
Jamie Silva, board staff. I would just like to mention, solely speaking for the advisory committee, as part of the recommendations that we came before the board, it was figuring out how the overlap of other statewide initiatives are coalescing with our efforts for the board for CVFPP and those measurable objectives from the conservation strategy. So within the restoration world, we are doing that, and we're trying to dive deeper into it.
Yes, that's great. That's great, Jamie. Thanks.
All right. So for strategic goal number 3, I had a joke here and I took it out, but I'm going to say it anyway. I thought about getting hats and T-shirts made for this one, just for the flood planning and programs branch, but I would only need one set, so we can save money there. Much of the board's collaborative planning, representation, and outwork sits squarely in the flood planning and programs branch for this priority. We support all of the objectives that are listed under Goal 3, helping all of the branches at the board to do their work more effectively with this important priority. So we are the primary planning resource for the board, representing the board across federal, state, local forums, supporting interagency coordination, and providing consistent planning guidance to project proponents. I also work on developing communication and outreach materials that strengthen collaborative governance and help the public understand our role in the board, and to help them understand where we sit in the Central Valley for flood risk reduction efforts. Also help to support the committees, partnership structures, and early planning and engagement, keeping the board's perspective clearly represented and that planning efforts remain aligned, transparent, and accessible. Next slide, please. Yes, please.
Just because I'm a compulsive questioner.
We love it.
So your actions are all in the planning phase. Do you get involved in implementation?
So when some of the ways that the branch supports implementation is, as we talked about strategic goal number 1, the operational efficiencies and the engineering role that we serve here. Our opportunity to support that branch is part of the way. Another way is, again, to help to communicate and bring back to the engineering team or the environmental team concerns or issues that are coming up in all of these different activities that are going on. So we have a voice and a presence in the work that's being done to align with our partners and in their capacity. For implementation of the plan, for example, for our 2022 priorities, we are supporting advisory committee and the opportunity that we have to start moving some of those efforts forward that were recommended as actions, and then also in the development and the participation in project development team for the U.S. Army Corps Comprehensive Study, which we are now working on 35% design maturation to meet Chief's report in just about 18 months. So
that's still in the feasibility area. You're not in the actual implementation field or construction.
Well, as mentioned, I am the only member of this of this group, so we really do have to target our efforts in the planning community. Hopefully, if we can get support and continue to grow in our organization and align, we will end up having those roles more firmly planted in our activities for those implementation priorities, especially after 2027 plan is enacted and if when this feasibility study comes to fruition, that construction phase begins, and I'm helping to set up the opportunities that we know it's coming, 2032, et cetera.
And that would be in what way? In other words, once a project's been funded and it's going forward, I'm not understanding how you would be involved in that.
I probably, at that point, it would be turned over to hopefully, at that point, it'll be turned over to the engineering branch, and then I'll move on to other planning efforts and the update that's about to be coming up to the next. And many we have. Yeah, I'm about to show you a bunch of plans that we all have to be aligned with, and again, resources are tight.
Okay, that's just the clarification I was looking for.
Thanks, Joe. Okay. I don't know where I left off, but we'll start over. So for goal number 3, it's important that I can highlight that there are several key objectives and cross-cutting activities throughout the branch, but here a few of these. I hope to highlight the work that we do under this branch. Again, I mentioned that the Army Corps of Engineers is a large feasibility study, and it is, a large portion of my work is to be aligning that work that's being done there. For 3.3, we represent the board across state, federal, tribal, and local forums, and we help shape communication and agreements that support multi-agency coordination. For 3.4, the branch focuses on improving efficiencies, where we identify overlaps, share recommendations, and reinforce governance through regional partnerships. And under Objective 3.6, we support communication and develop outreach materials that help better build public understanding of flood management and planning efforts. Next slide, please. So for the Yolo Bypass Comprehensive Feasibility Study, as Joe mentioned, it is a feasibility study, and we do hope it results in a large construction project. It is the first mega study in the nation, and it is from considerable investment from our state, federal, and local partners. We are the non-federal sponsor for this large effort. It is a $600 million proposed project, perhaps, if we can, again, achieve that 35% design maturity, resulting in a 2-to-1 benefit-cost ratio at the end. So it's worth our time and investment to stay aligned with our local partner, SAFECA, and with support from Department of Water Resources. I have been participating in the project delivery team, technical team participation, engineering, design, hydrology, hydraulics, modeling coordination, cost risk analysis, and leadership briefings. I've been working with my partners to maintain planning alignment across agencies and contributing to alternatives for formulation, environmental considerations, and major leadership engagements with support from our environmental leads and from staff in the engineering unit, and of course from leadership from Andrea and Chris. Next slide, please. The master plan release was another major milestone that the Flood Planning and Programs branch brought to the board this year. In April 2026, we published the Yolo Bypass Cash-Through Master Plan, and it is a major milestone with implications that support the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, the comp study, and our regional multi-benefit planning. I supported final production, accessibility review, and regional rollout of the YBCS master plan. This work included coordination with DWR and consultants, aligning project descriptions, addressing web publication issues, and preparing board presentations. The Yolo Bypass Cash-Through Master Plan is intended to be a framework to help guide and inform federal, state, and local water management decisions and collaborative planning. It is not a regulatory document, but rather it describes a balanced approach to long-term management that is consistent with the YBCS partnership's values. It includes descriptions of challenges and opportunities for multi-benefit programs and projects, provides a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis, an ecosystem baseline report, and actionable recommendations. Next slide, please. So for the partnership, the Yolo Bypass Cash-Through Partnership, the board serves as the lead agency, and this partnership is comprised of 16 partners in support of the recently published master plan. We manage the website and gov delivery updates for more than 1,200 subscribers. coordinate quarterly committee meetings, lead engagement planning for the comprehensive study. In WORDA 2020, the comprehensive study committed to aligning with the partnership and making sure that the priorities of the partnership are included in the work that they do. And we're also supporting the renewal of the partnership MOU. This keeps everyone connected, informed, and ready for upcoming milestones. Please visit the website that we also built. Next slide, please. So partnerships and planning is a big priority for the board, as you know, and this final slide shows our work connects to a wide range of planning efforts across the region, everything from the water plan, SGMA and healthy rivers and landscapes, to Upper Yolo bypass planning, the Delta plan, the water resilience portfolio, and many others that Jamie mentioned. The Flood Planning and Programs Branch plays a key central role in aligning all these efforts with the board's strategic plan and keep the board's momentum of maintaining strong, long-term, forward-looking planning and capacity. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'll take questions and hand it back over to Andrea.
Any comments or questions from the board? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, you guys, and I appreciate the briefing. Just for me, and as we move forward, just because people are getting to know me, I don't do really well with good. I do much better with tell me what is the bad. It's been a long time since good crossed my desk. So as we go through these processes and I'm getting briefed up and going through these pieces, like when Keely was talking about the interaction, like with the housing that, again, we come at this from a different perspective is at the macro level now coming down into like the more focused level, like how is housing interacting? What are planning commissions doing? How is law enforcement dealing with the unhoused population? Which law enforcement agencies? Things like that to me, and understanding like, look, this is our problem. I know the work is going well. I know funding is an issue. I mean, everything I've read shows that piece. But for me personally, as we're having these discussions, please do not start with the bad, because that's how I process information, and I'm okay with that. Because if I hear the bad, I can help find out how to get to the good. So just as we go through these, like listening to everybody as they're going through their programs and the plans and things that Keely, because I think so much like Keely does, hearing these pieces and starting to figure out the component parts, especially with the interaction between the local governments and the state and the federal government, those are the pieces that we can help kind of, or at least I feel like the best skill that I have at this point, knowing that I have a very steep learning curve, is trying to help map that web and understanding who the players are and what are the biggest problems. So I'm not going to put, you guys don't have to tell me that today, because I'm sure the list is long and deep. But for me personally, that is the best way for me to get up to speed, and I don't want people to feel like they can't tell me something they're fearful of, because in our old capacities, the worst thing that could happen is us not hearing what is the worst case scenario and that happening and dealing with it in a very quick and methodical way, as opposed to, hey, things are going really well, here we have a few problems here and there, I want to start with the problems.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and I was just reflecting on what Board Member Countryman said. So, I mean, I think the interesting thing about this board is one of the interesting things. There's many, probably. But one of the interesting things is the regional watershed, like, jurisdiction, which crosses many political jurisdictions, many political jurisdictions. And I'm not just talking about counties and cities. I'm also talking about lots of special districts, and like some of them very tiny reclamation districts. And so it's an understatement to say that we're under invested in planning, because we have Christine, which I feel like we need to be realistic. Like our goal is really to be in the rooms and to be understanding like what the priorities are for our state, our Department of Water Resources, but also for all of these other regional players, and then making those connections, and also understanding the conflicts, so that we, in this very unique watershed regulatory board that also has leadership opportunities, like can help to deconflict some of those things and figure out ways in which we can move forward on our primary mission, which is to protect the Central Valley from flooding. So I think, thank you, Christine, for all your work. And I also know, we're realistic. Like, we're not coordinating all of this, right? Like, I mean, we're a very small piece, but I think that we can be in those rooms and challenge people to listen to each other and to be thinking more watershed-wide as opposed to just their little political jurisdiction. And so I think that your question and comment is fair, because the implementation side is most often not by us in the case, unless we're the non-federal sponsor and then like the federal government's in the room and there's, but I do think that, I mean, the thing when I first joined the board, I was really reflective of like, this is such an old organization and it came up in a very different way, but it's actually really modern in that we are oriented around watersheds, which is, wow,
Yeah.
like, so great, right? Because most other political jurisdictions are in charge of their thing that is like very much smaller and has nothing to do with a watershed. So I think it's really a unique place, and I think we have an interesting role to play in those rooms, and we appreciate you being in those rooms.
Thank you.
And I think leadership is really what we want to continue to impart.
Thank you. I'll just thank you for that comment. I really do appreciate that recognition. My background with DBR comes from the watershed world. That is sort of my language. And I do have an analogy where I've often referenced, if you ask someone how to build a bridge, if you ask an engineer, they'll talk about truss and weight and bearing and structure and facility. But if you ask a policy or a collaborative governance person, they'll talk about who owns the bridge, what's the bridge going over, what's the barriers, what are the obstacles, who's suing us, how is it going to be funded, how are we going to get support, who's going to assign the agreements. Like, it's a lot more than just engineering, and when you're trying to build such a large, complex system around the state plan of flood control. And I think our role here, as we've noted on the strategic plan, is to continue those engagements with those partnerships, open the doors to those that may not have had a voice before or that have an interest, and give them an opportunity in a place where they can trust to be heard and to engage in the process, so that when we are prepared in the future and we overcome some of those barriers that can be done in the early stage of planning. We can talk about O&M in the early stages. We can talk about environmental risks in the early stages. And when we get to that implementation point, many of those barriers are smoothed over so that we can actually get that work done. So I hope that's the role I play in my career, and I hope that's the role that I play here for the board, and I'm honored to be here, and I thank you for your time.
And I am just reflecting on, thank you, Christine, for that, and we appreciate you. I'm just reflecting on what Jim said. What is some of the bad? All of this takes too darn long. I mean, some of the tours I've been on, lots of these projects take an entire career to get from start to finish. And so that needs to be shortened significantly. And I think there is the possibility to do that. But for example, the YOLO bypass is a really, there's a lot of different players that have a lot of different interests. There's a lot to work through. There's federal, state, local landowners. Like, there's a lot of complexity, but we do need to make sure that we're getting in the room together. Everyone agrees the sky is blue, and then we can start, right? Because, and so just really appreciate all of that work, and also realizing that, we need to figure out how to move things to conclusion faster.
Thank you for those comments. I would also like to highlight that our local partner, Safeco, for the comprehensive study. We have been going out just this week in person and online, meeting with landowners and interested parties and talking to them, and groups that represent the region, and having those sit-down in-person meetings to talk about their priorities, to understand what the risks of the project are to them, and to have that opportunity to feed that into the work that's being done in this feasibility and the larger comprehensive study that the non-federal sponsors hope to also put in place, and then set us up for strategic opportunity for funding for Water 2028 and beyond. Thank you. I'll give it back to Andrea.
Happy to take any additional comments or questions.
Since Jim brought up problems, you know, we have a huge problem with the snake out on our levees and doing maintenance on the levees, but we can't because the snake's there and because of the squirrel holes in the levees. Is part of your branch coordinating with Fish and Wildlife Service to try to improve that connection so that maintenance work can get done?
I believe you're referencing the giant garter snake, a duly listed species, federal and state listed. I'm going to turn that over to Jamie Silva from the Environmental Services for his coordinated response.
Thanks, Andrea. Again, Jamie Silva, board staff. Simple answer, no. But, you know, Department of Water Resources is a really great example within their flood maintenance office. They are coordinating with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on a programmatic agreement for levee maintenance themselves. So there is headway to, you know, think about the endangered species and how it fits within the realm of maintaining the state plan of flood control, because we do realize that the DGS do bask on that levee crown. You know, it may impede some maintenance obligations that our local maintainers need to do in order to maintain the system. So, you know, as much as I feel that, you know, it is an impediment, you know, we do have to realize our natural resources and protective of that species, but also balance how we fix the system and maintain it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's great, but if you're a reclamation district and you're trying to do work out there and you can't it seems like a possible board role would be to help in that interface with Fish and Wildlife Service. You know, there's things like that. I'm not clear where we get involved in it, maybe not, but it would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, Joe. I think that our board member countryman, I mean, this is something I've noodled on with some people in the community, just trying to think about, because there has been all of these efforts by this governor with the cutting green tape, and I've asked in many, many rooms, like, how is this helping us? And we've had some presentations from some conservation groups about how it has reduced time to completion of restoration projects. But I think that it's unclear how any of those tools that have been developed can help make reclamation districts in their work. And so I think that continues to be something that we need to keep working on, because there's a lot of delay and there's a lot of money because of that delay.
And again, Jamie Silva, board staff. I did attend the Army Corps' Regulatory 404 program workshop, and they did have a representative from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that did present their initiative to kind of revamp their IPAC program. And so it's still a year. The acronym, I will have to get back to you on that, but I do remember it was IPAC. But it is years away, but it's kind of their new initiative to streamline consultation under Section 7 of Endangered Species Act. So hopefully through that program, we would be able to streamline that consultation and help our local maintainers.
That'd be a great thing. I'd fully support that for sure.
All right, good discussion. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Buckley? Lost my agenda. Any public comment on the board's strategic plan and the presentation? Nope. Seeing none in the room or online, we are going to move on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Team. DWR has submitted a written report. I don't think anyone is here from DWR to report on that in person. Any questions from board members about the DWR report in the packet? Just for Mr. DeBoo's education, every month there is a very detailed reporting of major activities that have happened in the flood world at both DWR and then also our own staff's activities, so that can be spark interest by board members about things they want to learn about more, or questions about whether that's a priority or not. So it's very helpful for us. Anything else on staff activity reports? Any questions?
I just comment. I gave Mike a bunch of questions and they're responding, but there was one thing that is just, to me, I used the word in my question, unacceptable. We have a plan submitted to do geotechnical sampling to determine what the levee needs for protection. It's a plan. It's not actual work. It's the plan. It's been over 2 years to get that approved, which to me is beyond comprehension. And when I ask about it, it appears that because the way the wording was in the thing, it's a decision, that there's going to be a decision made to actually approve and do that sampling work. And that triggers the Corps of Engineers into a full environmental investigation of the sampling program. I don't know how we get through this, how we can work with the Corps and reach some common sense thing where we can approve how to go sample the levee in something like a month instead of like something like 2 years. It's very frustrating for the people in the field trying to do this work, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Betty, well, I don't know what you think about this, but to me, I'm dumbfounded by it.
I share your confusion about why this is happening and what our opportunities would be to speed it up, but I'm sure it would be helpful in terms of the problem of delay that we all acknowledged earlier in this meeting.
Can I ask, to Chris, to Executive Officer Leaf, have you all had a meeting recently with the Army Corps about this topic?
I don't know that we've had a meeting specifically on this topic, but the Corps of Engineers, earlier this year, Adam Tell, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, launched a series of memos that he's calling the Build Infrastructure, Not Paperwork initiative. And as part of that, they are looking at making the 408 permission process faster and more efficient. And I know that we have brought up these geotechnical investigations as an issue in the past. It's frustrating for staff also that these things take as long as they do.
Staff has to be totally upset with it because they can't act. They can't act on it, even though it's a simple thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's contributing to Mr. Harvey's receding hairline.
Well, Well, it seems quite inconsistent with what their top line is trying to convey about what they want to prioritize with the Army Corps. So it feels like maybe the timing is ripe to get some sort of streamlined approach on the testing. I mean, also obviously that testing, and especially given the modern technology that we have around testing, like should be able to be like much more, we want to do more of that so we have more information about where our vulnerabilities are. So that makes a lot of sense to me. It's something that I would ask you all to think about a plan for moving that issue specifically along, to maybe try and
Joe Countryman again, I worked for the Corps for 21 years. And if I learned anything, it's that the Corps of Engineers is an aircraft carrier. It is not a speedboat. And to turn it even a little bit takes a tremendous amount of power and effort. And but if we don't keep bringing it up with them, we're never going to get there.
But there is a moment of opportunity here. So the Corps is working on a package to codify its Section 408 permission program, and we expect some information on that by the end of August. We'll see if they stick to that time frame. But this particular issue is on our radar, and we will certainly comment on the regulations to be sure that it's an issue for them to consider. It's also on NAFSMA's radar, so I anticipate that they will also comment in that manner, and I'll push them to do so.
Joe Countryman again. I would say, well, I won't get carried away. Let's say 90% of the permits don't have to go to the Corps. We have sufficient staff capability and knowledge to approve those permits. Only the things that, say, affect the system as a whole, like if an additional diversion was made that might affect the channel capacity, or operational things that are system-wide in nature. But the stuff generally around the levees and all that, it's stuff our staff could do. If they would just delegate it to us, we could handle it. But I don't know how much they're willing to do that.
So far, they're not.
Just,
Board Member DeBoo, yeah.
Just on this piece and the kind of the interaction with the federal elected officials, the state elected officials, who does DWR, like if we were to say, to your point, this is if you look at the map, it's a pretty bipartisan group of members of Congress and the state legislature that represent this area. And I'm sure we have interaction with their staff, I know, but to some degree, and I know we're staff is issues, shortages are real. But who handles that? Does if we went to DWR, went to the board staff here and said, hey, we want to get a letter together from members of Congress that represent this area to send a letter to the Army Corps saying, here's our issues, here's an expedited process we appreciate that you're doing. How does that function?
I'll take a stab at that. So the primary way for Congress to influence the Corps' policy decisions is through the Water Resources Development Act, which is typically done in even-numbered years. So in the Ledge report this month, there was a write-up of the House's version of the act, which included some potential direction from Congress to the Corps on Section 408. Now, the Corps has been notoriously slow to implement policy direction given to them through the WRDA. So it's a continuing engagement, and it's it's something that we and our national association that we're a member of continues to push and engages with the Corps. Our staff engage with the Corps at the district level to talk about these issues, and we engage along with our partners across the country at the headquarters level. But like Joe said, it's a very large organization, and it's difficult to change the way they do things.
Chris, is it NAFSMA, or what's the name of the?
NAFSMA.
Do you attend all those meetings, or who is our contact with them?
Yes, I actually sit on the board of NAFSMA, and I attend many meetings that they have.
I've heard the Corps listens to them, as much as they can listen, but that's a #1 vehicle to create change, or at least start change, I think.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to this, just because of the world that I'm no more than this world. And I'll just be more direct. When members of Congress pick up the phone and call people, it bothers them. When state legislators pick up the phone and call state agencies, it bothers them. My piece is more, do we sit down, and again, we do briefings with finance, we do briefings with the LAO, we do briefing, do we have engagement with even just chiefs of staff or legislative representatives from elected officials to tell them, here are our issues and why things are so slow? So to be more direct, talking to people who actually can cause whatever you want to look at, annoyance, direction, power, whatever the words are, that are not through the traditional, slow, bureaucratic processes. So that's more what I'm asking. I understand the process very well. What I want to know is, how do you apply pressure to that process to make people care more? So that would be more my piece here. So, and I'm sure we do, I know we do legislative visits, but like, for example, Kevin Kiley represents the Folsom Dam. He's got things going on right now. It would matter, I would think, to a member of Congress that your gates aren't getting done. I don't even know what those are yet, but you'll tell me, Joe. You're gonna, but like things like that. So just thinking a little bit more about how we're engaging with elected officials. And I don't want to go out, I get it. And it's like DW, that's why I was asking the process, is it DWR or whatever, but making sure that people understand why the process is slow. This goes back to relationships. But when they hear that process, it will probably irritate them. And then you have a little bit of movement. So I just leave it at that, and we can talk about this at another time. But sometimes getting outside of the normal scope of the process that's been established, that is establishedly slow, there are other pressure points to use to try to influence that process.
Thank you for that. Board Member Dubu, agree. Any other comments, questions, food for thought? I feel like I got a lot of food for thought. All right, anything else? I am going to just announce we've got any other board comments at this time. We've kind of, oh yes, okay, go ahead. Board Member
It wasn't
Andrews.
clear we were on the general comments.
Yeah, we have moved on.
I just wanted to let the board know that I've accepted the invitation to be the board liaison to the designated floodways program. It is.
Thank you for your service.
I have a feeling that all of you, well, with the exception perhaps of our newest board member, know more about the history and challenges associated with the designated floodways program, but I'm interested in hearing from you about that, understanding a bit more about the context in which we are attempting to make some headway in modernizing that program in a way that will allow it to be effective. It is part of our regulatory responsibilities, and it's an arena that I feel fairly competent to be helpful in, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with our staff and the consulting team on that program. But I would love to have the benefit of your thoughts, concerns, and considerations about that. And then secondly, I wanted to mention that Board Member Bosler and I had an opportunity to meet with the Upper San Joaquin RFMP folks recently, which was really helpful in better understanding that part of the system, but also raised for us an issue that I imagine is going to end up before us at some point related to work DWR's in the process of planning and hoping to implement at the Mariposa bypass structure. And so I'm hoping that we can have some internal briefing and communication with our collaborators at DWR about that to smooth that process when it does actually come before us, because there are some pretty significant concerns that the district expressed to us. We want to understand better if there's a way to smooth that process out and make the project a better one. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to our strategic plan presentation today. That coordination and ability to move multiple different objectives forward, I think is something we want to stay very focused on. Thank you for that. I feel like you will take comments on designated floodway at other times, not just today. So if you want to collect your thoughts and get back to Betty, that would be great as well. But I don't know if anyone has any comments today. I'm looking at you, Joe. All right. Any other board comments? Just a little bit. We had coordinating committee this week. It was good. I already mentioned we had a robust conversation about the lack of clarity about the FEMA report that came out a month or so ago, and also just the huge financial shift that some of the recommendations would be to states. So continues to be of concern. I think a lot of it requires acts of Congress, but certainly there are things that are at the discretion of the federal government and FEMA, which have already really manifested themselves of not getting as many times where you get 100% funding, leaving it to the 75-25 cost split that's traditional. And so, they're just another area of the federal government that's just really important for us to continue to monitor, because any kind of permanent changes to that structure will be very, very significant for the state in terms of its fiscal planning. Because government needs to show up when an emergency happens, and they need to show up in a robust way. So, but just a little bit of background for Mr. DeBoo about our committees. The advisory committee is really around the environment and the natural resources coordination with all of the work we do in flood planning. And then the coordinating committee is much more of the regional coordination between the state and the local governments, and also the reclamation districts in all parts of the Central Valley. And we bring different topics. Sometimes the board members bring topics that they want to hear about, but it's just a really informal way that we can have more learning from each other. DWR takes opportunities to do a lot of presentations of all of the data and things that they are experts and have been building expertise, and it's a really great way to build possibilities out of these conversations. So we have a few of these things coming up next month. We have a board workshop on August 21st. What's the topic on that?
At that workshop, we'll be discussing the tweaks to the fee regulatory package
that
are required for OAL, as well as a new regulatory package centered on technical definitions and requirements.
Great. So that one's going to be a heavy legal workshop. We have an advisory committee August 25th. And then we have a board meeting August 28th, and then another coordinating committee in September. And that is back at West Sacramento. I thought it was coming back here. No? It's back at West Sacramento. Yes.
Just wanted to remind Board Member Bosler, public comment on any of the board member discussion on
Okay.
the previous item.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, before I move along, any public comment? Online? Nope. All right. Yes, I think there's been some moving around on the schedule, and so we're back in the headquarters for the board workshop in August, at the flood board's offices for advisory committee, and then back here at headquarters for our board meeting like normal. And then the coordinating committee is also at its normally scheduled place, which is West Sacramento City Hall, which we had a full room the last time. So that was really great to see. I know, so, what's that? Yeah, donuts. There was donuts and coffee, but it also the parking is getting a little tight there. Is my experience. Okay. Anything else? With that, and we do have a closed session. We do not have a closed session, so I am going to adjourn. All right. Thank you, everyone.